Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we cut through all the noise and really try to get straight to the core of what you need to know. In today's busy world, information is just everywhere, isn't it? But real insight, well, that's what we're here for. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, frankly, many of you, especially Christians, seem to be grappling with. It's that complex and often debated intersection of faith and finance, specifically when it comes down to stock market investing. We've pulled together a pretty robust stack of sources, articles, interviews, academic stuff to really unpack a question that seems, well, top of mind for so many right now. Our mission. It's simple, really. To extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights, and offer you a clear, structured understanding. We want to look at the different viewpoints, the potential pitfalls, and crucially, the biblical principles related to this pretty challenging financial activity. So let's start our deep dive.
It really is an incredibly timely question. I mean, the whole conversation around personal finance and investing, it's just not confined to, boardrooms anymore. It's become a daily topic for individuals, for families, everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. You hear these terms constantly now, like, Usha, that's debt-fueled investing, right?
Exactly.
And literally pulling out everything, even retirement funds.
Yes, scraping the barrel.
And Alanya, which is kind of cute, it combines stock and child, meaning stock newbies, and then young adults pulling out pensions. These aren't just some obscure financial jargon anymore. They've genuinely become part of our everyday language. It reflects a massive shift.
And what's really fascinating here is the underlying societal shift that's driving all this.
Right.
Kim Jae-hai from Christian Daily pointed out how things like the COVID-19 pandemic, those periods of really low economic growth, ultra-low interest rates, and just this pervasive sense of job insecurity.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it strongly pushed people towards looking at stock investing. Many see it as maybe a way out, a potential path to overcome what's called the spoon class theory. The idea of being born with a gold spoon or a dirt spoon.
Right, the privilege aspect.
Precisely. And to combat these really deep-seated anxieties about their financial future.
And it's not just purely rational, is it? There's a strong emotional element, too. I mean, we've all seen a friend or neighbor maybe make a bit of money and thought, maybe I should jump into.
Exactly right. That's the FOMO, the fear of missing out syndrome in action. As the Inori newspaper noted, people genuinely feel like they're being left behind by these wealth creation trends. And that feeling pushes them to consider stock investing. It's a really powerful psychological driver, sometimes overriding, careful thought.
So given all that context, it's really no surprise, is it, that this big question keeps popping up across Christian media. You see it in News and Joy, Good TV, Christian Today. Should Christians invest in stocks or crypto? And the answers, well, as we found in our research, they're all over the place. Incredibly diverse, often conflicting, and honestly, sometimes a bit confusing.
Which is exactly why this deep dive is so needed.
Yes.
And to really navigate this complex landscape, we absolutely have to start with a crucial distinction: the difference between investment and speculation.
Okay.
Benjamin Graham, often called the father of value investing, mentored Warren Buffett, that guy.
Right, the legend.
Yeah. He laid it out very clearly in his book, The Intelligent Investor. He said, an investment operation is one which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and an adequate return. Operations not meeting these requirements are speculative. Simple as that, almost.
Okay. Thorough analysis. That phrase seems absolutely key, and it sounds like it goes way beyond just, glancing at a stock's price today.
Oh, miles beyond. It means really diving into fundamental financial analysis, understanding metrics like PER, that's price-to-earnings ratio, what people will pay for earnings, PBR, price to book, comparing market value to book value, ROE, return on equity, how efficiently the company uses shareholder money, EPR, earnings per share, basic profitability.
Right.
But it also involves looking into the CEO's philosophy, their ethics, really assessing the company's long-term growth potential, its impact. And if you're thinking about indirect investments, like, say, mutual funds, it means doing your homework on the fund manager, their track record, their strategy. If you don't do this kind of analysis, then, well, by Graham's definition, it leans much closer to speculation. Doesn't matter if you make a profit or not, actually.
So it's about the process, the diligence, not just the outcome.
Exactly. Which brings up another really important point, the whole psychological side of engaging with the markets. You need deep self-awareness. Understanding your own risk tolerance is absolutely paramount.
Why is that so critical?
Because it serves as a vital warning sign. It helps stop you from letting greed and impatience drive your decisions. And history shows us again and again that usually leads to significant losses. Proverbs 21.5 offers this timeless warning. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty.
Wow, that's powerful. Haste leads to poverty. It really emphasizes careful planning over quick impulse.
It does.
And it frames long-term investing almost as cultivating a partnering mindset with a company, like you're a part owner, rather than just gambling on short-term price swings.
Spot on. It's about building a relationship with the business, not just chasing a quick buck.
Okay.
Now, what's especially insightful here is how different economic theories actually view stock investment itself. Pastor Park DaeKwang offers a really helpful framework, analyzing it through three major perspectives.
All right, let's hear them.
Okay, first there's neoliberal economics. This is pretty much the dominant view, particularly in places like the U.S. today. This perspective actively justifies both stock dividends, seeing them as legitimate profit from capital and capital gains from trading. It believes trading stimulates the market, helps allocate capital efficiently, boosts corporate production. From this angle, stock investment is seen as a healthy, rational economic activity, good for the economy overall.
So very much in line with the mainstream capitalist thinking we usually hear. Sounds quite positive on the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are other views.
Oh, absolutely. Take the reformed mainstream economics view. It's more nuanced. It's generally okay with stock dividends, sees them as a fair return, but it gets highly critical when it comes to seeking capital gains from, active short-term trading.
Why the criticism there?
Well, this perspective often calls that kind of activity casino capitalism. It argues it pursues unearned income not tied to productive work, and that it expands wealth inequality, creates dangerous economic bubbles, and can even lead to financial crises.
Casino capitalism. That's a strong term.
It is. For a Christian looking at this view, it really calls for discernment. Is my investment strategy contributing to a stable economy? Or am I encouraging risky, purely speculative behavior that might actually harm others down the line?
That's a really powerful counter-argument to the first view. Such strong disagreement. Are there even more sort of radical perspectives?
Well, then you have the Marxist political economy. Now, this theory is profoundly critical of both dividends and capital gains.
Okay, why both?
It views dividends as basically acquiring a slice of surplus value, which, from their perspective, is created through the exploitation of labor. So gaining dividends means you're participating, maybe unknowingly, in a system built on exploiting workers.
Wow, okay. That's a heavy critique.
It is. And it also argues that historically accumulated capital often has violent origins. This theory labels stocks as fictitious capital.
Fictitious capital? What does that mean?
It means the stock certificate itself isn't the actual productive capital, like a factory or machine. It's just an ownership claim on future surplus value. So it suggests stocks can create this illusion of wealth creation that's detached from actual production.
Interesting.
Now, it acknowledges that stock issuance was crucial for developing capitalism, but it emphasizes that, fundamentally, capitalism itself is rooted in labor exploitation. It points to the inherent speculative nature of stock values because future returns and interest rates are unpredictable, right? Which encourages short-term trading. And furthermore, it argues stock price changes don't actually increase a nation's total wealth, they just redistribute it, often making wealth inequality even worse.
So for a Christian concerned about social justice, this perspective really challenges them to think about where their gains, even dividends, are coming from.
Exactly. Are they inadvertently benefiting from systems potentially based on exploitation? It urges a much deeper ethical look at what's in your portfolio and its real-world impact.
Man, it's quite striking how different these three views are. Neoliberalism, cheering it on, reformed mainstream, being cautious about trading, and Marxism, fundamentally questioning the whole system.
Precisely.
It just shows there's no single easy answer, even among economists. It really highlights how complex this is for Christians trying to navigate it faithfully.
It certainly does. Which brings us right back to the core of it for Christians.
Yeah.
The principles of stewardship and the warnings we find in Scripture.
Okay. Stewardship. Let's talk about them.
The absolute fundamental Christian principle here is that God is the ultimate owner of everything, all material possessions. We're merely stewards, managers.
Right.
You look at 1 Timothy 6, verses 17 to 19. It says, "Command the rich in this world not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides everything. Command them to do good, be rich in good deeds, be generous, willing to share. By doing this, they lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so they can take hold of the life that is truly life. See how it shifts the focus completely? Away from just accumulating wealth, towards using it for God's purposes.
That really grounds everything, doesn't it? The why behind it all. And speaking of scripture, people often bring up 1 Timothy 6:10, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." It's crucial to get that right, isn't it? It's not money itself that's evil.
No, exactly. It's the love of it, the idolatry of it. Pursuing it above God, above people. That's the root of evil.
Which connects back to how we acquire wealth and that idea of earned versus unearned income we touched on.
Yes, and maybe a helpful analogy here comes from U.J. Young of Covenant Church. Think of stock investment like a knife.
A knife. Okay.
A knife can be incredibly dangerous if it's misused, right? Like a robber's knife used for harm. But it's also incredibly useful for good. Think of a surgeon's knife saving a life, or a chef's knife preparing food.
Ah, I see. So it depends entirely on how it's handled, with knowledge, with principle.
Precisely. The use of the tool, the intent behind it, that's what decides its morality in practice.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights intent and application. And this ties back to the unearned income question, often linked to 2 Thessalonians 3:2. If anyone is unwilling to work, neither should they eat. How should we understand that in this context?
Well, the core principle there isn't really a blanket condemnation of all income that doesn't come from, say, direct physical labor. I mean, art, caregiving, those are vital forms of work.
Right.
And that obviously doesn't apply to people who genuinely can't work.
Yeah.
What that verse really emphasizes is the dignity and value of productive engagement. It's a warning against idleness, against trying to gain without any effort or contribution.
So it applies to diligent investing, but warns against those purely speculative, get-rich-quick schemes.
Exactly. And we also see these broader biblical paradigms for economic justice that should inform our financial practices. Think about Isaiah 65, verses 21 to 22, talking about a time when people will build houses and actually live in them, plant vineyards and eat their fruit, not toiling in vain.
Enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Yes, it implies a just system. And even the Old Testament command not to charge interest on loans within the community, while we interpret it differently today, fundamentally points towards non-exploitative financial practices, treating people fairly.
Okay. And managing resources. That makes me think of the parable of the talents. How does that story fit in? People often use it to justify maximizing returns.
Yeah, it's often brought up. But the emphasis in that parable seems less about hitting a specific high return and more about faithful stewardship and diligent effort.
Right, not burying the talent.
Exactly. Making the most of what you've been given, not letting it sit idle out of fear, being a productive steward. But it doesn't necessarily mean taking huge risks for the absolute highest possible return at any cost. Ultimately, as Han Myung-jin from GOD TV stresses, it has to be God over stocks.
God over stocks. I like that.
Any aggressive gambling-like investment that basically replaces your trust in God with trust in the market, that's what needs to be avoided.
So bringing all these principles together, what does this look like practically for Christians actually trying to navigate the stock market? I know the Honorary newspaper offered some practical guidelines.
Yes, they call them the 5 commandments for healthy stock investing, which kind of crystallize these ideas nicely.
Okay, what are they?
First, invest only surplus funds. Avoid debt-fueled investing, no ayin yad. This links directly back to that warning about the love of money leading to ruin and just basic wise stewardship. Don't risk what you can't afford to lose.
Makes sense. What's number 2?
Second, do not quit your job to become a full-time investor. This really aligns with that biblical emphasis on the dignity of labor, productive engagement. Investing should be a tool, not your sole purpose or identity.
Oh. Third,
beginners should diversify. Use things like mutual funds or ETFs rather than trying to pick individual stocks right away. This speaks to the wisdom of thorough analysis, avoiding hasty decisions when you don't fully understand things yet.
Okay, number 4.
Fourth, do not follow other stock picks blindly. Only invest in what you truly understand. This reinforces that idea of diligence, responsible stewardship. You're accountable for your own choices, not just following the herd.
Right, do your own homework. And the last one.
And fifth, do not believe those short-term trading maxims.
Yeah.
Buy low, sell high. Sounds easy. But market timing is incredibly unpredictable. This directly fights that impatience and greed Proverbs warns against. urges a long-term, patient view.
Those seem like really solid practical steps, very grounded.
They really are. And they transition us nicely into maybe the deeper Christian challenge here. What's the ultimate purpose behind our investing? And what about the temptations that inevitably come with it?
Okay, purpose and temptation.
The ultimate purpose for a Christian investor shouldn't just be personal wealth building. It's meant to be for the expansion of God's kingdom.
How so?
Any profits gained should be thoughtfully, prayerfully used. For tithes, for offerings, for charity, for paying taxes faithfully. As Choi Tae-yeon from the Culture Mission Research Institute points out, this transforms what could be just personal gain into a tool for God's redemptive work in the world.
That's a critical distinction. It immediately makes me think of that really stark warning in 1 Timothy verse 9. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction.
Exactly. It's not just a casual caution. It's saying the pursuit itself, the wanting to get rich of all else, that can become a destructive idol that undermines your faith, your character. And it's also worth remembering that point about wealth redistribution. Stock market gains, especially the speculative ones, often don't create new wealth for the whole nation. They just move existing wealth around.
Right, Pastor Park mentioned that.
And as he highlighted, this frequently increases wealth disparity, concentrating resources in fewer hands. That dynamic can feed cycles of inequality, which really goes against those biblical principles of justice and everyone flourishing.
And then there's a personal cost, the psychological toll. Jung Yoon-sik from Christian Portal News made a great point about the constant anxiety, the irritability, the loss of inner peace that can come from obsessively watching markets or chasing gains.
Absolutely. What good is 1,000% return if it destroys your peace, your character, your relationships? It really forces you to ask what true wealth, true security actually looks like.
It really does. And we have to challenge some of the advice out there too, right? Like that idea some people float. Live on rent, invest all your house money in stocks.
Oh, that's incredibly risky advice for most people. Owning a home provides a fundamental sense of security for many families, pushing people, especially young people, into highly speculative markets with money they need for basic stability. Well, as Lee Jung-hoon noted, it's dangerous, particularly when homeownership is already so difficult due to wider issues.
Yeah, it feels irresponsible, and it kind of circles back to that fictitious capital idea we talked about earlier from the Marxist view.
How so?
Well, when advice pushes people into really speculative things like betting the house money, it feels like it's playing right into that potential illusion of wealth creation that isn't always tied to tangible value. It makes you question what's real, what's sustainable.
That's a very insightful connection. And this is exactly where something like socially responsible investing, or SRI, comes in as a really powerful, principled alternative for Christians.
SRI, tell me more about that.
So SRI actually has roots in Christian values. It's about consciously choosing to invest in companies that meet specific ESG criteria, that's environmental, social, and governance. It means actively seeking out companies that promote human welfare, care for creation, ensure fair labor practices, treat people well, and contribute positively to their communities. As Kim Hyung-chul from the Christian Worldview Academic Fellowship emphasizes, it's a way to make sure your investments are directly aligned with your deepest Christian values.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about if your money grows, but how it grows and what it supports while growing.
Exactly. You're asking, is my money supporting companies that exploit people or pollute or engage in unethical stuff? Or am I intentionally backing businesses that are trying to build up communities, foster fairness, and care for the planet? It's a really tangible way to put your faith into action in your finances.
Ensuring your financial decisions are consistent with your overall Christian identity.
Yes, avoiding that disconnect. We're called to have a consistent Christian identity in all areas of life, and that absolutely includes how we handle our money. Our values should genuinely guide our choices.
Okay, so wrapping this all up.
Well, to kind of tie it all together, stock investment isn't automatically evil or wrong, but Christians absolutely must approach it with eyes wide open. Understanding the risks, the speculative elements, the potential for exploitation, the focus really needs to be on purposeful investing. Investing that aligns with those core Christian values of stewardship, justice, love for neighbor.
Right.
And, for some, the deeper aspiration, as Pastor Park suggested, might even be working towards a world where our financial systems actually transcend the current models, maybe moving beyond systems potentially based on exploitation towards ones that truly serve human flourishing for everyone.
That's a powerful vision and definitely a lot to think about. So as you, our listener, reflect on today's deep dive, maybe consider this question. In a world where, let's face it, financial knowledge is increasingly crucial just for managing life, how can you ensure that your pursuit of financial wisdom stays anchored? Anchored in godly principles, in a genuine desire to serve others, rather than getting swayed by that fleeting allure of quick riches. Remember, true wisdom, whether it's in investing or just in life, it really begins with knowledge, yes, but also with a firm foundation, a foundation that lasts.